South Wales. It was a remarkable... It was a pretty remarkable achievement in the space of just 6 weeks. Now, since then, we've had some big political changes. I think our result helped get rid of not just the worst Prime Minister in living memory, but probably the worst Prime Minister in the history of our nation. And into that space, of course, bounded, full of optimism, full of energy, Boris Johnson. And I'd be the first to say he did inherit a very difficult position. But he's now fighting this election, telling us that he'll get Brexit done. Well, I'll talk a bit more about that in a few moments. But I'm very struck at something the commentators don't seem to understand. They didn't understand it back in 2015 when I led UKIP, and they still don't get the point. There seems to be this very lazy assumption in our national media that Brexiteers are all actually Conservatives, that Brexiteers are all on the centre right of politics, and it is a fundamental misunderstanding. There were 5 million people that voted Brexit and then voted Labour in the 2017 general election. 5 million of them. And of course, here in South Wales, so many constituencies that voted Leave and that now have a Remainer MP. An MP that wants to put a second referendum to the people with not really much of a choice. I think, in some ways, perhaps Diane Abbott summed up the Labour position best. No, really, honestly. There were no numbers involved, don't worry. But there she was on Question Time the other week, and Labour are going to win the election, negotiate a new deal, put that deal against Remain to the British public in a referendum, and then campaign against the deal that they've negotiated. I mean, you couldn't actually make this stuff up. Now, it's pretty clear that the Labour Party have decided, or should I say the London Labour Party have decided. I mean, it's more about Islington than Isloin, isn't it? I mean, that is where the Labour Party is run from. But no, their policy, quite clear, they want to make you vote again, because first time round, you didn't know what you were voting for, did you? You stupid little people. You really must do better next time. I mean, it's not only patronising, not only insulting, but the choice that Mr. Corbyn wants to give us is Remain versus a new form of Remain. Labour will crush the result of that referendum, and Labour have made it clear they actually don't believe that they as a party, we as a nation, are good enough to make our own laws. They want those laws made in Brussels, and they've made that perfectly clear. So, and you've heard it already on this platform this morning, but it's true. During the referendum, in the wake of the referendum, in the run-up to and including the manifesto for the Labour Party in 2017, there was an absolute promise that they would implement the result of the referendum and honour the will of the people. And there's no other word I can use than they have betrayed that trust. It's gone. Now, of course, there's much talk about the Remain alliance, which perhaps in Wales is more significant than it is in any other part of the United Kingdom. The Greens, Plaid, and the Liberal Democrats basically fighting together on a revoke ticket. I mean, amazing, isn't it? That you can just seek to abolish the result of the greatest democratic exercise in the history of these islands, and yet that's what they want to do. I suppose at least we know what they stand for. Well, they do actually. They stand for revoking the result of the referendum. And so they put their alliance together. Now, you may know that I've been calling for a Leave alliance. I was very, very struck that we had, in the wake of the European elections, we had the Peterborough by-election. And we were the challengers to Labour in that seat. But there was a Conservative candidate. And, of course, the Remain Labour candidate won. And indeed, shortly after that, in Brecon and Radnor, there was another by-election in which it turned out that the Conservatives were the challengers to the Liberal Democrats, but we also stood, got a significant number of votes, and guess what? The Remainer Lib Dem won. 2 consecutive by-elections, won by Remainers, because there had been no sensible working accommodation between people who say that they're on the Leave side. So I've been calling for this Leave alliance, calling for Conservatives if they're on the right track. I'll come back to that, but calling for Conservatives if they're on the right track, the Brexit Party, and some quite senior Labour figures who would want to be part of this. If that Leave alliance was put to the country, it would win a very big majority. And it's not, let me just make this clear. You can read in the newspapers that somehow I'm trying to split the vote. I'm not trying to split the vote. It's the Conservative Party who do not want to come to any accommodation, who want to put their own interest, the party interest, over what I think is the national interest. But I'm going to go on trying for a few more days and make the point that in Torfaen and other constituencies here in South Wales, the Conservatives haven't won for 100 years. And they are not going to win here on December the 12th. There is no chance of them winning. So I would make this urgent plea to Boris Johnson and others. Don't split the Brexit Party vote. Here in South Wales, we are the challengers to the Labour Party, and if you're not in the field, we will beat Labour in many of these constituencies. But it does need a bit of movement on policy from Boris Johnson. All right, he inherited a difficult position. The clock was running down to the 31st of October. He wanted to get rid of the backstop. He got rid of the backstop, and he's now presenting this as being the most extraordinary, great new deal. Well, on examination, and I know Mark has been through some of the detail, it is not a great new deal. It's Theresa May's bad old treaty. And the claim, get Brexit done, well, it's tempting, isn't it? Because we're all pretty hacked off, aren't we, after 3 years, that this has not been delivered. So it's a really good slogan until you examine the fact that actually, if he wins a majority on this ticket, ratifies the treaty, all we do is go straight into 3 more agonizing years of negotiations. And our hands are already tied in those negotiations, made clear in the documents that to get a trade deal with the EU, we have to have regulatory alignment, even in areas like taxation. We have to accept the principles of the common fisheries policy, continue, and I could go on with a long list. Our hands will be tied. It's very unlikely we'll be free to strike deals with the rest of the world. In fact, I was talking to an American friend of mine the other day about this, and he told LBC Radio that he thought it was extremely unlikely there'd be a trade deal between the UK and the US if we continue down this route. So I would say this to Boris Johnson: if you really believe that for the course of the next 5 weeks you can get away with telling the British public that this gets Brexit done, I think you're in for a bit of a surprise. It's rather like, to me, it's rather like a second-hand car salesman. So we'll have a look at this. It's a nice little runner. and it's got a really shiny bonnet that's just been polished up the day before, and you think the price looks all right, and you say, can I have a look under the bonnet, please? No, there's no time for that, Governor. You know, you've got to buy it now, or someone else will take it. And that's what Boris did. You know, late on that Thursday evening in Brussels, he agreed to these documents. He then had the first Saturday sitting of Parliament for 37 years, because he wanted to rush it through before anybody had actually read it, anybody had actually absorbed it. I spoke to MPs, friends of mine, who said, oh, isn't it marvellous? I said, well, have you read it? Well, we haven't had time yet to read it, but, you know, we've been briefed that it's a very good deal. Well, I have to say, I'm beginning to wonder whether the Prime Minister has read it. No, I really mean that, because he's given wholly inaccurate answers in the House of Commons on what it means for Northern Irish exporters selling goods into the rest of the United Kingdom. Amazing, isn't it? There he was at the DUP conference just a year ago, declaring his love for the Union and saying that no British Prime Minister would put a border down the Irish Sea, and yet that's exactly what he's done. So he got that answer wrong. He was then asked a question about fishing. He gave an answer that was completely and utterly wrong, and I'm wondering whether he's actually read it. So I put this challenge out today. If you really believe that this is a great new deal, or as you said in the last couple of days, a fantastic deal, if you really are trying to tell the British public this gets Brexit done, let's have a civilised head-to-head debate on what this EU treaty means. And I'd be only too happy to stand with Boris and to talk this through, because I have read it, and I haven't memorised it all, but I've got a lot of it in my mind, and frankly, folks, it's not Brexit. It's a short-term political fix and an attempt to win a general election. And I am just not, after 25 years of campaigning for us to be a free, independent nation, I'm not prepared to simply stand aside and see this sold down the river, and nor are many millions of people out there who will vote for us on December the 12th. Boris, your deal will not survive scrutiny. Your deal will not survive a head-to-head debate with me. Your deal will not last 5 weeks. So please, over this weekend, make some changes. Make it clear that we absolutely have to leave at some point in 2020 with or without any form of deal. And any form of deal must be a trade deal, not one based on regulatory and political alignment. Now, I hope he does it. I sincerely hope that he does it. I don't know whether he will. Either way, as Nathan has said, here in Wales, we are ready to fight all 40 seats. And if in the end the choice is revoke with the Lib Dems and Plaid, is a second referendum with Labour, is a Remainers Brexit with Boris, you can guarantee one thing: you'll be able to vote for a clean break Brexit, because we will be on the ballot paper here in every seat in Wales. There are so many other things we should be talking about. You know, we really should be talking about jobs and the economy. Amazing, isn't it? We've got the Chancellor splurging hundreds of billions here, and not to be outdone, Labour promising even more billions there. No one's talking in this campaign about wealth creation. No one's talking about the 5.5 million brave souls in our country who are sole traders, self-employed, doing their best. They're the ones that create real wealth in an economy. They're the ones that create real jobs in the private sector. None of this is being debated in this campaign. And I also want to move the debate on to political reform, because it seems